Well, good afternoon, everybody. We're here in Davos, live on UN Web TV, webtv.un.org, live in the SDG Media Zone, and I'm very pleased to be joined by Sanvee, who's the Secretary General of the World Alliance for the YMCA, and Elisha, the CEO for United for Global Mental Health. I'm Dan Thomas from the United Nations Global Compact, and we're here to have a conversation about engaging young people in the SDGs, but more importantly about young people's mental health. Carlos, if I could start with you. You work with young people all over the world.
Yeah.
Are you seeing an increase in young people dealing with mental health issues and stresses and strains?
Yes, thank you. We are living in a world that is changing very fast with a lot of complication. It's putting a lot of stress on everybody, but especially on the young people.
Yeah.
The question young people are asking is, what is going to happen in the next 10, 15, 20 years? And that's very stressful. That is increasing. And when you look at the climate, we look at absence of job, we look at access, equality, and all those, young people are asking those questions. So I will say yes, young people are more concerned, and they are dealing and they are facing the mental health issue, and also concerned that there is not too much response from institution, from government about that. So yes, they want to make it not to be a taboo anymore,
right.
And that's why it's important that we talk about it.
Yeah. And Elisha, what kind of how is this manifesting itself in young people? It's a sort of unseen thing in many ways. It's not visually obvious, obviously. How are young people dealing dealing with this issue?
It's a really good question. For what we know for young people all around the world, this really is the leading health concern that they have, and it is universal. It's different in every country, of course, but we are seeing it as a global phenomenon. Right. We see depression alone is a leading cause of disease, expected by 2030. Around 75% of all mental health conditions begin before the age of 24.
Oh.
And actually, suicide is the leading cause of death for young women, and the second leading cause of death for young people aged 15 to 30
right.
globally. Right. And it is intangible. For so long it hasn't been addressed, and so there is a massive unmet need. And young people, what is so inspiring, they are stepping up themselves to address this in their peer groups. They are calling on their governments. They are recognizing it's time for change. It's time to address the stigma.
Mm-hmm.
It's also time to invest, because if you recognize this is something you're struggling with and you want to be better at your job, you need to be able to go somewhere to get that support.
Yeah. Carlos, you work with young people around the world. Is it different in every country? Do young people face different challenges depending on where they live and which society they come from?
Yes, it's very different, but it comes to the core. What is common to young people is about, do I count? Do I count? That is all over. But the manifestation of things change from continent to continent, or even country for country, because of the culture. So talking about mental health, you should not underestimate culture or belief. So there are some societies that are very traditional, the culture, they believe are stronger than others, where mental health is taboo, you don't talk about it. But in the northern hemisphere, people talk about it more openly, even though I'm not sure that is that open. So it depends, but core is, can the voice of young people be heard on issue affecting them?
Right.
Yeah.
Elisha, why do you think it's coming up more and more? Why do young people feel able to talk about these things more openly? And what's changed?
I think more and more are being affected, and so as that grows, more and more will speak out. I think also we do have great leadership, organisations like the YMCA, high-profile individuals, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, and
the
others,
United Nations.
United Nations, who are starting to speak. And so when you have leadership and people in their own lives, you're seeing a coming together of a movement like we haven't seen before.
Right.
And it's good, it's needed. And for so often, I think this conversation around mental health has lived in a research community for decades, understanding this, and it's now coming into the public consciousness.
Yeah. Carlos, you formed a partnership with the United for Global Health. Why did you choose Elisha's organisation to partner, and how are you hoping to address this global issue with Elisha's organisation?
You know, the mental health issue is bigger than any of one can address. No one, not even the United States government or United Nations, not a single organization can address that. It's only through collaboration that we can address it. We come with different facets. So we are strong on mobilizing young people. We are strong in having our space available. But how to do it and how to mobilize other players, we find a space through United for Global Mental Health where we can add value to each other. Right. So it's adding value, it's building trust, it's the same issue. That's why we find a very good matching partner through United for Global Mental Health.
Elisha, what kind of programs do you run? How do you get young people to address this issue? How do you train people to identify young people who are suffering from mental health problems?
Yep.
And help them to overcome those problems?
So firstly, we recognise that actually young people, citizens, have their own demands. They have their own voice, and actually it's not for us to tell them what they need to change. So what we first did, and the main program we work on together, is a campaign called Speak Your Mind, which was designed by 15 countries of advocates, including a lot of young people, coming together and saying, how do we want to move our world forward? So we often sit in the background, finding them, bringing them together, asking them what they want, and then we back them. We support them in the change they want to see in their countries. We bring them to global places where their voices can be heard, and we help them to be amplified. Yeah. So having the YMCA at a country level and at a global level work together in the Speak Your Mind campaign to make sure those young people's voices are heard, and not just heard but acted upon, is the main work that we're doing together.
Yep.
Carlos, what resources are available to young people of the YMCA globally? What kind of resources are available to young people who are suffering from mental health issues? I guess it's very different in different places.
I'm sorry to say there is not much resources.
Right.
Because when it comes to mental health for young people, it's not a priority. So one of the aims of this Speak Your Mind campaign is to put pressure on government and people in leadership to increase the resources. The time to invest is now. Money is put on different other things because mental health for young people is not the priority. So it's very little. So when we have young people meeting, anything we want to do about that is not on top of the priority, but it should. Because all the Sustainable Development Goals, if you don't have young people with a good mental health, how can they work on poverty or have access to job? If you are suffering of dementia, of schizophrenia, you cannot go to job, you cannot do anything. Right. So it's common. How do we put our emphasis on that is what we are doing through this campaign.
Yeah. Elisha, tell us a little bit about how young people experience mental health issues. What is the sort of the range, whether it's more serious conditions like very bad depression or schizophrenia, what is the range of emotions or mental health issues that young people are dealing with?
It is broad. It's interesting. We often talk about mental health as one big group, but it does cover from the more clinical conditions, whether it's schizophrenia or bipolar, through to situational experiences. So I myself suffered with PTSD and depression and suicidal ideation following a trauma. A lot of young people, particularly in conflict zones or others, or actually everywhere, it's not in particular places we've seen in Australia after the fires where I'm from, worries about PTSD, through to a lot of young people just struggling with depression and anxiety of how to deal with this, the complex worlds they live in. Yeah. So it is broad. I think it's really important to say, around the world, we hear a lot from the higher income countries. In lower income countries, there are challenges actually in all countries, but especially around issues of rights. So are your human rights protected when you speak out?
Right.
We have instances of young people, all people, being shackled in Indonesia, in other countries because there's no treatment, and so you could be shackled or jailed for having a mental health condition. So the experiences are very broad. I think what it feels like is unique for each person, but it is common that we all have mental health, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it isn't. And how we experience in that based on how our country communities respond to us is different everywhere. But across the board, it is, as Carla says, it's time to invest, because across the board that hasn't happened to date.
So you've discovered in your membership, in your global organization, you've found this to be an issue that young people themselves want to address.
Yes, we did a global survey with young people to know what are the key issues they are concerned with, and mental health is among the top three,
really? Following
climate, depression, and then also having access to jobs. These are the three top issues that young people are talking about, either themselves or their friends. And another survey in Africa, the most neglected health. Young people, when you suffer anything, you go to the health center, they don't treat young people. They think they were smoking something and they put them aside because just of their age, something happening, they don't take it. And also we have the resurgence of this spiritual movement, churches, etc. Instead of dealing with the issue, they will put it on another categories. Then young people are coming up and to say, no, this is a serious issue. They are talking about it all the time.
Do they struggle to talk to their parents, the older generation? Is this something that they're suffering with alone in some countries and maybe developing countries?
We hear this more from the peer groups because this is where they trust. Because talking about mental health is about trust. So they don't necessarily go to the parent talking about that, because the parent will say, "What have you done?"
Right.
Or "You did something wrong." That's why it is. But among their peers, so that's why we are training some peer educator or early sign warning to know how do you deal with that, have a support group. It's just a beginning. We want to do more. We want to use more our space to be a space where young people feel freer to talk about those issues and to refer to other people who can help them.
Great. So Carlos Sanvee, the Secretary General of the YMCA, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Elisha London from United for Global Mental Health, thank you so much for coming to the SDG Media Zone here in Davos to talk to us about young people and mental health.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we might